I accidentally sent a text to the wrong person, and it ruined my life. We've all been there, right? You're multitasking, sending a quick text without thinking, and then that sinking feeling hits you. You realize you sent it to the wrong person. Usually it's just embarrassing or awkward, but for me, this one mistake set off a chain of events that completely spiraled out of control. One tiny slip up, and everything changed. My relationships, my job, even my sense of trust. Let me tell you how it all went down. It was just another busy Thursday afternoon. I was juggling work emails, making plans for the weekend, and texting my best friend Sarah all at once. She'd just sent me a screenshot of this hilarious meme, and I couldn't stop laughing. At the same time, I was typing out a message to my boss about a project deadline. "You can probably see where this is going," Sarah replied, joking about how I needed a break, and without thinking, I typed back, "Ugh, I wish boss's name would chill. It's like she thrives on making my life miserable." I hit send and went back to my emails, completely oblivious to what I'd just done. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my boss. My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" she wrote. For a second, I thought I was imagining things. Then I checked my messages and felt my heart sink. I'd sent the wrong text to the wrong person. Instead of sending my snarky message to Sarah, I'd accidentally sent it straight to my boss. I stared at my screen in disbelief, hoping there was some way to undo it. Maybe I could delete the message before she saw it? Nope. Too late. The read receipt was right there, staring me in the face like a death sentence. Panic set in. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. Do I apologize? Pretend it was a joke? Blame autocorrect? None of the options felt good, but doing nothing wasn't an option either. I started typing, "I'm so sorry. That message wasn't meant for you. It was just a stupid joke, and I didn't mean it. Please don't take it seriously." I hit send and immediately regretted it. The apology sounded desperate, and I knew it wouldn't erase the fact that I'd just insulted my boss to her face. Well, in a digital sense. She didn't reply right away, and the silence was torture. Every second felt like an hour. My anxiety went into overdrive as I imagined her reading my message, stewing in anger, maybe even drafting an email to HR. I started pacing around my living room, cursing myself for being so careless. When her response finally came, it was short and ice cold. "We'll discuss this tomorrow." That night, I barely slept. Every worst-case scenario played out in my head. Would I get fired? Humiliated in front of the entire office? Would this somehow end up in one of those workplace horror stories that go viral online? I kept replaying the moment I hit send, wishing I could somehow go back in time and stop myself. The next morning, I dragged myself to the office, my stomach churning. I tried to act normal, but every time someone looked at me, I felt like they knew, like they could read my guilt just by glancing at me. I finally made it to my desk and sat down, hoping to lay low until my boss called me in. But, of course, she wasted no time. Her office door opened and she stood there, looking directly at me. "Can we talk?" she said, her tone calm but unmistakably firm. I followed her into the office, trying to keep my composure. As I sat down, she closed the door and took her seat across from me. For a moment, she just looked at me, and I felt like I was about to break. "So," she said, finally breaking the silence. "Care to explain?" I stumbled through my words, apologizing profusely, and trying to explain that the message wasn't meant for her, that I didn't truly mean it. But the look on her face didn't change. She was calm, professional, but I could tell she was hurt. "I don't know what bothers me more," she said, "the fact that you sent that message, or the fact that you clearly think so little of me." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could I even say? It wasn't just an issue of professionalism anymore, it was personal. I'd crossed a line, and there was no easy way to undo it. "I honestly don't know what to say," I admitted. "I made a mistake, and I know I hurt you. I really don't feel that way about you. I was just venting in the moment, and it was completely uncalled for." She raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying my attempt to soften the blow. "You know, people vent all the time," she said, "but they usually have the common sense not to send their complaints to the person they're complaining about." I nodded, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. "You're absolutely right," I said. "I was careless, and I take full responsibility for it. If there's any way I can make this right, I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, she just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed and leaned back in her chair. I'll admit, I'm upset, but I also know we all make mistakes. I'll think about how we move forward from this. But for now, I need some space. Let's keep things strictly professional until I decide where we go from here. I nodded again, grateful she wasn't outright firing me, but also painfully aware that I'd just damaged our working relationship, possibly beyond repair. Leaving her office felt like walking out of a courtroom after barely escaping a guilty verdict. I slumped back into my chair, trying to focus on work, but my mind was racing. The air in the office felt heavier than usual, like everyone could sense something was off. And then the whispers started. I overheard snippets of conversations, my name, hushed tones, glances in my direction. It didn't take long to figure out why. Someone must have overheard my meeting with my boss, or maybe word had already spread about the message I sent. Either way, the damage was spreading like wildfire. By lunchtime, I felt like a total pariah. My usual group in the break room was noticeably quieter around me, and a few people avoided eye contact entirely. The one person who did talk to me was Mark, one of my closer coworkers. He sat down across from me and leaned in. "Hey," he said, his tone low. "I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "Honestly, I don't even know," I admitted. "I feel like I've ruined everything." He gave me a sympathetic look. "It's bad, yeah, but it's not the end of the world. People screw up. What matters is how you handle it moving forward." His words were kind, but they didn't do much to ease the knot in my stomach. It wasn't just about my boss anymore. My reputation in the office, the trust I'd built with my coworkers, was hanging by a thread. The next few days were brutal. It felt like every interaction at work was colored by the text. Even people who hadn't heard the full story seemed to be walking on eggshells around me. And my boss? She was keeping things strictly professional, just like she said she would, but the friendly rapport we'd once had was gone. Every email from her was curt, and every meeting felt like a test I was failing. It didn't take long for the stress to bleed into my personal life. I confided in Sarah, the friend I was originally trying to text. "This whole thing is consuming me," I told her over the phone. "I feel like I can't breathe at work. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who's judging me." Sarah sighed. "Honestly, I feel kind of responsible. I shouldn't have joked about your boss in the first place." "Stop," I said quickly. "This isn't on you. I'm the one who sent the text. I don't know how to fix it." Her advice was simple but clear. You can't change what happened, but you can prove it was just a mistake. Keep your head down, do good work, and let time do its thing. It was solid advice, but easier said than done. Every project I worked on felt like it was being scrutinized more than usual. Even when I nailed something, I couldn't shake the feeling that my boss was still holding the text against me. It was like walking through quicksand. No matter how hard I tried to move forward, I felt like I was sinking deeper. The tension finally came to a head during a team meeting. We were presenting ideas for an upcoming project, and I could feel the pressure to redeem myself. I had worked overtime to create a pitch I was proud of, hoping it would show my boss that I was still a valuable member of the team. When it was my turn to present, I went all in, explaining my idea with as much clarity and enthusiasm as I could muster. As I finished, I glanced at my boss, hoping for even a flicker of approval. Instead, she barely looked up from her notes. "Thanks," she said flatly. "Does anyone else have ideas?" That single sentence hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just that she dismissed my work, it was that she dismissed me. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, but I kept my face neutral, determined not to let it show. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur, and by the time it ended, I was mentally and emotionally drained. Back at my desk, Mark stopped by. "Hey, your pitch was solid," he said. "Don't let her reaction get to you." "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I admitted quietly. "It's like no matter what I do, she's already made up her mind about me." Mark gave me a sympathetic look, but didn't have an answer. And honestly, I didn't have one either. All I knew was that something had to change, because I couldn't keep living under the shadow of that one mistake. After that meeting, I realized I had two choices. Let this mistake define me, or do everything in my power to change the narrative. I decided on the latter. First, I took a hard look at myself. Sure, the text was a careless mistake, but the underlying frustration I'd felt about my boss was real. Instead of letting it fester, I tried to understand where it came from. I even started keeping a journal to track my thoughts and figure out how I could handle stress and vent in healthier ways. Next, I went out of my way to rebuild trust, not just with my boss, but with my team. I volunteered for extra assignments, made sure to communicate clearly and professionally, and went above and beyond on every project. It wasn't easy, and there were definitely days when I felt like giving up, but I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. The turning point came a few weeks later. We were in another meeting, brainstorming ideas for a client. My boss asked if anyone could take on a challenging piece of the project. Normally, I'd hesitate, afraid of biting off more than I could chew. But this time, I raised my hand. "I can handle it," I said confidently. For the first time in what felt like forever, she looked at me with something other than indifference. "Okay," she said, "let's see what you've got." Taking on that challenging project was one of the hardest things I'd ever done at work. It required long hours, constant problem solving, and collaboration with multiple departments. But I was determined to prove myself, not just to my boss, but to everyone who'd lost faith in me after my mistake. As the deadline approached, I poured everything into the final presentation. When the day came, I stood in front of the team, walking them through my solution. I could feel their attention locked on me, even my bosses. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't second-guessing myself or worrying about their judgment. I was just focused on doing my best. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then my boss nodded. "This is great work," she said. Exactly what we needed. I nearly collapsed from relief. It wasn't a gushing compliment, but coming from her, it felt like a breakthrough. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in the way she interacted with me. She started including me in more discussions, asking for my input, and even giving me credit for my contributions during team meetings. The office whisper network, too, seemed to quiet down. Slowly but surely, I felt like I was earning back the respect I'd lost. It didn't erase the mistake I made, but it showed that I wasn't defined by it either. Looking back, I'm still amazed at how much one tiny mistake snowballed into such a massive ordeal. It wasn't just about the text, it was about how I handled the fallout. I could have let it break me, but instead, I learned from it. It forced me to confront my frustrations, improve my communication, and take responsibility for my actions. My relationship with my boss isn't exactly what it used to be. We're not cracking jokes like before, but it's professional and respectful. More importantly, I've earned back her trust, which means the world to me after everything that happened. As for the rest of the team, the gossip eventually died down. People moved on to the next bit of office drama, as they always do. And I've been able to focus on what really matters, doing good work and rebuilding my confidence. If I've learned anything from this experience, it's that mistakes don't have to define you. It's how you respond to them that matters. And yeah, maybe double-checking who you're sending a text to is a good idea too. Have you ever made a mistake at work that felt like the end of the world? How did you bounce back? Share your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear how you turned things around. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around for more real-life moments and lessons. Thanks for watching.